Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee. Appreciate you tuning in to this episode of the podcast. Coming up, we got some DK show highlights. Grant Bilse and Bill Michaels joined me to chat a little bit about the Packers heading into their playoff game against the Eagles this coming weekend. So we touch on that, but I'm going to lead off the podcast here with my Packers thoughts here on this Thursday. So the big news from practice on Wednesday for the Packers was Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur both being very coy about his elbow injury, and Jordan with some very short answers to the media, saying hopefully that he'll be ready to go on Sunday. Jordan Love's playing. Okay. Jordan Love is going to play in this football game on Sunday. It's gamesmanship. As ridiculous as it may sound at a pro level, this is something that happens all the time. It'll continue to happen all the time. As minor as you think it is, or as childish as you think it may be, this is something that'll happen all the time. So, remember a few years ago, we still had probable as a injury designation on the injury reports that would come out on Fridays, before the games on Sundays. They got rid of that. Remember a few years ago, they got rid of that because, Bill Belichick exploited it. He would have players listed as probable, and probable pretty much meant that you were going to play. If somebody was listed as probable, yeah, you could kind of mark it that they are going to play in that game. But Bill Belichick had a player probable, and then lo and behold, didn't play. So little gamesmanship there. They got rid of the probable status. Now it's just questionable, which leaves it more 50-50 up in the air for these players. Same thing that's happening here. It may look to us as obvious, but if any team, any coach out there can, think that they can make another opponent prepare for an extra minute, an extra hour, whatever the case may be, if they think they can, make it a little bit more difficult on an opponent for just a minute second, they're going to do that. They're going to take every sort of angle and every sort of, way to try to confuse an opponent or try to catch them off guard. Anything that makes them try to prepare a little bit differently, they're going to do that. Even if it seems as small and maybe as, minute as this, they're going to do it. It's not just Matt LaFleur. It's going to be everybody that does it in every sport. So he's playing. He's going to play. Now, I would say, how effective is he going to be? Okay, I'm sure the elbow is bothering him. I mean, he mentioned, it kind of hurts when he throws. I'm sure it's bruised up and such. So I'm sure it's affecting him at that point. But I think the biggest question that I have, the biggest question I have is going to be, and we're not going to know till the game time probably, is how much is it affecting his throwing ability? How much is it affecting his ability to throw it down the field? Now, I don't know how much Green Bay is going to be able to get away with throwing the ball deep down the field anyways with this Vic Fangio Philadelphia defense, but how much is it affecting his ability to put some zip on the football too? That's the main concern. That's the main question I have when it comes to Jordan Love's elbow right now, is how much of a liability is it when it comes to throwing a football? He said he can grip it and such, but how much power, how much distance can he throw on that thing? That's my concern level right now heading into this game. But we'll talk more about this game. We got part of our Man Cave Podcast network, if you will, is we've got the 715 Green and Gold Tailgate Podcast that's up there too. So we talked to Rob Demovsky, ESPN.com Packers reporter on there. That interview is going to be available on that podcast. But that podcast is also through the Man Cave Podcast, so you'll check it out over there. But just a little bit of a plug for the 715 Green and Gold Tailgate Podcast. So, and plus we'll have more Packers talk on Friday as we get set for the game this coming weekend. But without further ado, let's get to some DK show highlights here. And Grant Bilse joined me and Bill Michaels joined me. First up, it's Grant. So we'll get to that right now. Joining us now on the Shoe Doctor's bullpen line, you hear him Monday through Fridays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. right here on Sports Talk 105.1 and 790 a.m. Mr. Grant Bilse of the Wisco Sports Show. Grant, good morning, sir. How you doing?
Good morning, Dan. I am excellent. I get a little bit more excited about this game the closer we get, actually. Really? I know there's some pessimism, and that's fine, but I'm starting to get excited for Sunday.
So what's it got? Why are you getting a little bit more excited? Is there something that's changed, or is it just because the enthusiasm's getting a little bit closer, the adrenaline and such, or what has you feeling good about this game coming up?
I think everything that's changed this week has actually been for the negative. Well, Jordan Love's elbow, I don't know that yesterday was a huge vote of confidence. I'm still going to believe that it's mostly fine, but it wasn't as confident building as I wanted to be yesterday. I think I'm getting more excited because I'm just thinking about what Sunday's game is going to look and feel like. It's the 3:30 game. It's the primetime matchup, the biggest slot of the weekend. It's Packers-Eagles, two huge franchises with a lot of history, great coaches, great teams. They have matchups in the past in the playoffs. I don't want to spend this entire week thinking about and talking about how my team is probably going to lose. And in doing so, let what could be a classic, awesome first-round matchup just kind of pass me by. So I'm trying to get fired up for a game that should look and feel. It's going to be outside, right, under the lights. It's not going to be in one of these sterile domes that all look the same. So I'm just excited for the matchup. I don't know that the Packers are giving me a lot of confidence that they can win, but they've been in every game this year against elite teams, and I think they're very capable of winning. So I'm trying to get fired up, get excited a little bit for it.
You mentioned Jordan Love's elbow, and Matt LaFleur first was a little bit coy, and the media was ironically kind of ushered out before practice really began, and then we heard from Jordan Love. He was very short and saying, "Yeah, hopefully I'll play on Sunday." You feel like that's a little bit more of a gamesmanship coming from Green Bay at this point?
I feel like there's always gamesmanship coming from Green Bay. I don't doubt that his elbow's probably sore. I bet it will affect him. I don't know how much, but I bet it's affecting him on some level. I also think, and I bring this up probably to an obnoxious level on my show, I just think when head coaches get jobs in the NFL, they're like, all right, yes, I get to coach the type of offense that I want. I get to install my program. Oh, and also I get to withhold information from the media. That, it just seems like something that every one of these coaches has dreamed of doing for years. And Matt LaFleur, my favorite example, the first summer that he was a coach, Dan, they had just drafted Kamal Martin, and he injured his knee in practice. And the Packers asked Matt, I think this was in training camp, if not in rookie mini camp. This was so early on, probably training camp. And they asked him, Matt, was it the same knee that Kamal Martin had injured in college because he had an ACL or something in his time at Minnesota? And Matt was like, "Oh, you guys ask the tough questions, don't you?" And I'm like, Matt, that's such a simple. He just he loves this. He lives for this. You can see the smirk on his face yesterday. So I don't doubt that this injury is going to affect Jordan Love on some level. I also think that Matt LaFleur and most head coaches just love withholding information. So I think that's a big part of this too.
When you look at this matchup, obviously a lot of our listeners and fans have talked about Saquon Barkley going up against this Packers run defense. I think it's just been for how many years this Packers run defense has been awful, but rankings wise, they're seventh best in the league this year. I think there's some fans that still kind of question that, but when you look at this, when you see it's Saquon versus this Packers run defense, or the Packers passing offense versus the number one passing defense of the Eagles, which matchup there concerns you the most?
I think I'm more concerned about the Packers passing offense going against the Eagles, because especially now without Christian Watson, I think Vic Fangio is just going to tell Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, it's just go make these guys beat you. And for the last couple of weeks, especially, Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks, and I know Romeo Doubs has been hurt, they just haven't been able to win often enough. And I think they can. Dan, I think they totally can. I think Romeo Doubs could come out and have an awesome game, and Jaden Reed, if he just avoids drops and fumbles, could have a great game. We just haven't seen it. So that concerns me. And Jordan Love's kind of waxing and waning accuracy, along with some concerns about Matt LaFleur. All the pieces of this offense have just been a little bit off. So that would concern me more. I think Saquon Barkley will have a fine game, but I think the number one thing that Jeff Hafley has done a good job of in year number one, even with personnel limitations, is stabilizing things against the run. I think Saquon will probably have a good game, but I don't think, famous last words, he's going to completely break the game, right? I think the Packers will have opportunities on defense in third and passing situations to get off the field. Now, whether or not we think they can do it and their pass rush can get home and get off the field, that's secondary. But I think, yes, even against this Eagles O-line and Saquon Barkley, the run defense will do enough to have opportunities to get off the field. I'd be more confident in that.
Grant Bilse, host of the Wisco Sports Show, airs weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Statewide and right here on Sports Talk 105.1, 790 a.m. You mentioned Jeff Hafley, and you look at where this defense has ranked, 5th in total defense, 6th in scoring, which are as high as they were in 2010, and Packers fans know what happened that year. But for the longest time, especially like during the Aaron Rodgers era, you had Packers fans saying, man, if we could just have a top 10 defense or a top 15 defense with Aaron Rodgers, that's all we want. Well, you got a top 5, top 10 defense in a lot of categories, yet it still feels like maybe it wasn't at that level. Because I think a lot of fans still look at the pressures and the sacks maybe from this defensive front. How would you assess what Jeff Hafley has done year one as a defensive coordinator?
I think he's done a great job stabilizing things against the run. They had a 2-month stretch there where they played the Niners and the Dolphins, and the Niners were banged up, and the Dolphins were in the cold. But in those games, I mean, they just completely snuffed the run. You would figure in those games the Dolphins would want to get Achane going, and the Niners would want to get McCaffrey going, and it was a non-starter. I think Hafley has done a great job coming in and saying, all right, we're going to stop the run. We're not gonna let teams run wild on us and live in second and third and short. I think that's the thing that he's done the best job of this year. I think his use of cover 2 or some softer defensive looks on the back end has been really smart for his personnel, especially because not only has he been missing his number one corner, and his other number one corner is a safety kick returner who's actually done a pretty good job sliding in, but he's also, he's missed safeties, he's missed his linebacker, and his pass rush hasn't been all that great. So I think Jeff Hafley, for what he's had to work with, has been excellent. The final play of last week notwithstanding, I just thought that was some horrible situational defense, and I hope that's a blip on the radar. The hope is, and you mentioned 2010, the hope is that they can continue to stop the run and that they can get an absolute banging game out of Rashawn Gary and Kenny Clark. Because if those guys can come in and have their best game of the year and be huge difference makers, well, then I think this defense can be a championship-level defense even without Jair. We just haven't seen it consistently enough from that pass rush, and that's why I think there's a ceiling on this unit, despite the rankings that you mentioned, which are really good and a really first, I think, good step for Jeff Hafley in year one.
When, there's been, and I know social media can be a dark, dark place, especially when it comes to Packer fans and stuff like that. But, there's some that, aren't maybe the biggest Matt LaFleur fans out there. I don't think he should be on the hot seats or anything like that. But if there was maybe one thing that gives you a little bit of pause about Matt LaFleur, maybe the biggest thing that you have an issue with Matt LaFleur, whether it's like in-game management or something like that, what would that be with Matt LaFleur?
Well, the clock management at the end of the Bears game last week scares the heck out of me because that's just not something that, especially a 5th or a 6th-year coach, should be doing. Matt LaFleur is about as seasoned for how many years he's coached as possible, right? There are some head coaches that come in, they take over a bad team, they build it up, and let's say they make their playoff run in their 2nd or 3rd year, and then they got to learn how to coach in the playoffs, and then they take that. Like, Matt LaFleur was in the playoffs his first year. He's coached in lots of big games and big moments, so to see him situationally botch something as bad as he did last week, and that scares me. I really don't like that. Another thing that would give me pause is the lack of attention and the lack of success surrounding the details, right? Tom Brady on the broadcast a couple weeks ago said that their intermediate passing game is sloppy. It's not detailed. That scares me. And I know they're young. That's part of it too. But I think down the stretch last year, they had it dialed in pretty good. So I'm wondering what changed. With the fumbles and the penalties and the lack of attention to detail, in month number 1 of the season is one thing, but it's been that way all year, and nothing has really changed. So that worries me with Matt LaFleur. Like, what are the habits during the week? Does he have these guys on a level where they're focused on every little single thing all the time? I think that would be my concern. But no, absolutely not. I don't want him fired. I think he's a good coach, but when you're trying to win a Super Bowl, you got to nitpick guys, and I think there's some nits to pick for sure with LaFleur, like you asked.
So you're coming up with a game plan, Grant. You're with Matt. You're with Jeff. You're figuring out a game plan for this. What does Green Bay have to do, or what do they have to try to do to go into Philly and come away with a victory and maybe possibly even go face Detroit next week?
Well, defensively, I think the game plan stays the same as it's been. If you go back and watch the Minnesota game, the game plan was very clearly stop the run, don't let the run get going, get Sam Darnold and the Vikings to 3rd and 8, and then try to go get him and get off the field. Now, they couldn't get to him and get off the field. Sam Darnold and the Vikings ate this defense alive on 3rd down. But I think that game plan was sound, and I think that's their best path, especially against a team like the Vikings or the Eagles. So defensively, the game plan stays the same. Stop the run, and then try to get off the field in 3rd and obvious passing situations. Offensively, I don't know, Dan. The easy answer is Josh Jacobs. But like they're gonna have to pass the ball. They're gonna have to create some big plays because it's really hard to win the game 4 to 6 yards at a time. The drives are so long. There's such a great risk of turnover and penalty and negative plays when you're running that many plays per drive. So, yeah, they need to run with Josh Jacobs. The offensive line needs to come out and be firing and crisp and ready. And I think minus the Bears game last week, they'd actually been doing a pretty good job of that the final month of the season. What I'm struggling with and what I would kill to know and the meetings that I would kill to be in is how are we going to supplement Josh Jacobs with the passing game? What's that going to look like? Because whatever they've been trying to do the last couple of weeks hasn't been working. So how do you get Jordan Love in a rhythm early? And Dan, how do you get these wide receivers in a rhythm early? Mm-hmm. How do you get them some confidence? And I think that starts with, you know what, Jordan, can you hit him in the hands on the first possession? Can you get these guys real confidence-inducing catches, get them moving with the ball in their hands? So, you know what, if you come back to them later on in the game and the pass isn't perfect, they already have a catch or two under their belt, and they have some confidence. It's not that big of a deal. I don't know how they do that, and that's I think that's the biggest challenge is how do we get this passing game going to supplement Josh Jacobs to fill in the cracks? So it's going to be really tough.
Do you have a prediction? You're going to hold that for tomorrow and make us wait on the edge of our seats?
No. I would pick the Eagles to win by 3 or 4, and if I had to bet my house, I would imagine that this game would look like either their games against Detroit or Minnesota or their first game against Philly, even though both of these teams have changed a lot since then. I do, however, hold out a lot of hope that they can make the 1 or 2 plays necessary to finally win one of these games. I think they're close. I am not Johnny Raincloud this week, but if you're asking me to make a reasonable, rational, realistic pick, and I had to bet my money, I'd say the Eagles by 3 or 4, because that's what we've seen all year. That's all we have to go on so far.
Mm-hmm. Hey, before I let you go, because we do have college football, I got to ask you, being a Badger fan and such, can you – and we had RJ Cardinal on down in Madison on, and he, talked about, cheering for the Big Ten for a Big Ten matchup for the national championship. Can you do that, though? Can you cheer with your heart for a Penn State, Ohio State national championship, even if it helps the Big Ten conference out?
Yeah, I think so. I also like Notre Dame. I raised up kid going to Catholic school, so there's plenty of teams left in this playoff that I don't really have a problem cheering for. In a weird, twisted way, I wouldn't mind seeing Ryan Day get a nice victory. I think he's a good coach, and it's a good program. And I think maybe, you coach at Ohio State, you lose to Michigan. That's the way of the world. I'm not shedding tears for him, but I wouldn't mind seeing him notch a victory. I wouldn't mind seeing Notre Dame. I'm not a huge James Franklin Penn State guy, but it would be nice for the Big Ten, certainly. I probably would have cheered for Oregon, too. I don't really have a lot of animosity towards these other Big Ten schools, so I don't have a problem with that. No, not at all.
I would have preferred Indiana to advance a little bit further.
Yeah.
So that was just a feel-good one there, too. So Grant Bilse, host of the Wisco Sports Show, weekdays 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. statewide and right here on Sports Talk 105.1 and 790 a.m. Hey, we appreciate the time, man. I know you got to get ready for Bill's show coming up here in just a little bit, but let's do this again soon, okay, bud?
Yeah, anytime. Just let me know. I'm happy to come out and enjoy the game this weekend.
At Hy-Vee, they're more than just a grocery store. They're your one-stop shop for everything you need, all in one place. From fresh produce and top-quality meats to your favorite snacks and household essentials, they've got you covered. Need a quick dinner solution? Check out their delicious ready-to-eat meals, or swing by their in-store bakery and deli for made-fresh daily options. And don't forget to fill up the tank and take advantage of Hy-Vee's Fuel Savers. With friendly service, great prices, and convenience you can count on, Hy-Vee is here to make your day easier. Continuing our Packers talk here this morning, don't forget also continue to send us your predictions for tonight's playoff game between Notre Dame and Penn State. Hit us up with a text on that Shoe Doctors bullpen line at 715-830-1912. But joining us now, you hear him every weekday, midday here on Sports Talk 105.1 and 790 AM and across the great state of Wisconsin. Mr. Bill Michaels joining us here this morning. Big unit, appreciate you tuning in or joining us this morning, bud.
I'm tuning in too. You always get the update that comes across that says, "Hey, Dan's on live now every morning on my Instagram page." So good to go.
Hey, appreciate that, man. And well, I want to start off things. Jordan Love practiced yesterday, kind of coy a little bit with his elbow injury. Do you think that's a little gamesmanship going on with Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love right now?
Oh, absolutely. I do. I think that, they're going to try to, as much as we know Jalen Hurts is going to play, they're going to try to make it seem like, well, it could be Malik Willis if this whole problem with, the hand or the fingers, if you will, the touch for Jordan Love is not on par. Like maybe they won't be able to really throw the ball or go downfield or whatever. So, but Jordan Love he must be walking in lockstep with Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur must have said, don't say a word, because yesterday the Q&A, when they kept saying, but you can let it rip. Did you let it rip? Can you let it rip? And he's like, I don't know what you mean by that. It's like The whole world knows what you mean by that. You're the only one that supposedly doesn't. So, they're playing some gamesmanship right now.
When you look at this matchup, which one do you think is or maybe your biggest concern? The Packers' run defense, which is 7th, but I think a lot of fans are still worried about Saquon Barkley. Or is it the Packers' passing offense going up against the number 1 ranked pass defense of the Eagles?
I think it's a passing offense. Look, Saquon Barkley's going to get his. It's how many times does he hurt you? Does he get into the end zone 1 time, 2 times, or more? But it's the ability to me, the whole game rests upon the offense and about this crispness of the offense in the complementary football we have not seen. Because the defense, I said yesterday, look, if you've got, say 10 drives by Philadelphia, you got to get the defense off the field on 5 of them. On maybe a couple of them, you got to only give up a field goal, and then a couple more after that, maybe some touchdowns. So then you're looking at 20 points, by the time it's all said and done, and that's about what you can give up. Because I don't think the Packers are going to put many more points than that on the board. As a matter of fact, I saw that in Vegas they were talking about, 23 to 26 points would probably win the game if you're the Green Bay Packers or the Philadelphia Eagles. It's like the first one to 26 is going to win the game. So to me, you can't give up, say, more than 20. You got to be up by at least a score or 2 late in the ball game for this team to win. But what bothers me is the fact that this offense has not really gotten going all season long. And we've seen it. Their third down efficiency with their offense is 15th. Their fourth down efficiency is 23rd. Their red zone efficiency, while they're 10th, they need to be better, because when they do get into the red zone, they've stalled quite a bit here as of late. Jordan Love has looked inaccurate. I mean, there's so many different aspects to this offense that has not looked right, that if any one of those pieces isn't working, they're not going to win this ball game. They need to be firing on all cylinders to play a really good defensive team. Do you think you could put your finger out, we talked about it a little bit earlier too? Is it Jordan Love? Is it fundamentals with him? Is it game planning? Do you think it's a little bit of a mixture between the both? But do you have an idea maybe why this offense isn't really clicking at this point? I've said 3 things. First of all, I don't know why they insist on being out of shotgun a majority of the time, and they've basically gotten rid of play action. Because last year with play action and Jordan Love using his legs, there was a dynamicness to this offense. So that's the first thing. They've got rid of play action, and I don't know why. The second thing is, going back to the fundamentals, Jordan Love, a lot this season, fundamentally unsound. Because he's not Aaron Rodgers. He's not to where he can throw off his back foot or with 1 foot in the air and just flick it with his wrist 40 yards downfield on a dime. He's not that guy. So how Tom Clements has not grabbed him and said, hey, we got to get back to putting your base underneath you, planting and throwing, I don't know why, but they have not worked on his footwork a whole lot. And then the third thing to me is just accuracy, and it might go hand in hand with his fundamentals, but just the accuracy. I mean, deep balls guys have had to wait for, crossing patterns guys have had to stop. He hasn't really been able to hit guys consistently in stride, and he's put the ball in bad places and bad situations at times, or thrown at their feet. So I think it's kind of a structure thing of all 3, but they all go hand in hand. Bill Michaels, host of the Bill Michaels Show. You can check it out weekdays here, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on our stations at 105.1 FM, 790 AM. Also statewide across the great state of Wisconsin. Obviously no Christian Watson in this game. Deep threat over there. How does Green Bay replace the deep threat of Christian Watson in this game? I think you got two guys that can really run those routes. Dontavian Wicks certainly can. You've got good speed with Bo Melton. But I think the way you do it is if you're not going to be able to really stretch the field, if you don't think you have the ability to stretch the field, then what I would do, I would start sending my receivers out patterns towards the sidelines, and I would open up the middle for Jaden Reed in the slot and Tucker Kraft. Those two guys are reliable pass catchers. Now, Jaden Reed, though, this year has the most drops. He's got 10 drops. He leads the team in drops, so he's been a little bit iffy. But between those two guys, and then, oh, yeah, by the way, Luke Musgrave is a hell of a receiver as well. Start integrating him back in, where you've only targeted him twice in the last 2 weeks. It's like, what did you bring him back for? You know, I mean, I know you want to work him in slow, but you got to target him more than twice in the last 2 weeks. But Tucker Kraft is a chain-moving machine, and stop looking on third and short and second and short and third and short for the 40-yard bomb. I don't know why they continually do this. Start just taking what the defense gives you, move the sticks, live to fight another day, sustain drives, eat up the clock, because the more you're on the field, the more their offense is not. And to me, that's what I would be doing. I'd be making sure that the outs are, if they're going to cover the outs and the wide outs to make sure they don't get deep, that's fine. But give me the middle of the field. Give me Jaden Reed. Give me Tucker Kraft all day long.
Looking at this defensive front, or the front seven for the Eagles, how big of a challenge do you think they can present to this offensive line that maybe has surpassed expectations for a lot of people, considering Sean Ryan we didn't know a whole lot about, Walker coming in as left tackle. How big of a challenge is this defensive front for Philly this weekend?
Oh, I think they're really good. Jordan Davis is a hell of a nose tackle. He's a guy that can plug the middle, big time. And then you've obviously got Zach Bond, the Will linebacker, who's been really, really solid for them. Milton Williams, their defensive end, he's really solid. Now, Jalen Carter, he's the beast. He's the first-round draft choice from a couple of years ago, and he's the guy he's strong. He's got great leverage. He's powerful. I don't think, though, that this is an insurmountable task. I think that and remember, the Packers' offensive line, number one in pass blocking, but they're maybe, say, 15th to 12th in run blocking. But Josh Jacobs kind of creates his own stuff a lot of the times. And I think also Josh Jacobs is going to be extremely key to all of this before it's all said and done. And he needs to touch the ball between, say, 18 and 25 times in this game. But I think the offensive line of the Packers, I don't necessarily worry too much about them, but I also said the same thing going into the Detroit game where they were playing a bunch of nobodies up front that they just pulled off the street, and all of a sudden the next thing you know, the Packers' offensive line is on their heels and they're getting their ass handed to them. So I'm not saying never, never, but I think the Packers' offensive line can hold up. It's just whether or not they start mixing things up and bringing things, like bringing a couple of guys off the edge, or bringing your strong safety, Gardner Johnson or Blankenship. Some of those guys, if they start blitzing them, then you got to kind of pick those guys up. But for the most part, I think Williams, Davis, Carter, Smith, you're going to be able to handle those guys.
Fill in the blank for us. Green Bay wins on Sunday if they do what?
If they get off to a fast start. This Philadelphia Eagles team has been outscored a negative 35 in the first quarter of ball games this year. They start off slow. Their offense starts off slow. If you can get a couple of drives, get a couple of scores, and remember, the last time the Packers faced them, they were kicking field goals while the Eagles were scoring touchdowns. So if the Packers don't have drives that stall, then I believe that the Packers can win this game. But what the Packers can't do is keep going between the 20s and thinking that they got a great offense, because they got to be able to punch it into the end zone. That, which goes back to my red zone offense. They got to be better. They're top 10, and a lot of that came in those 5 games where they had that 5-game win streak going on where they were really good. But they've got to be more consistent when they get into the red zone.
Bill, if you had like one big bugaboo when it came to Matt LaFleur for what he does as a head coach, what would that be? Was it clock management? Is it preparation? What would be the one bugaboo you have about Matt LaFleur and his job performance?
I think today I'd sit here and say, how does your team come out of the tunnel? They've had a couple of really big games where they were flat and noticeably flat. And I speaking to Larry McCarron last week, the week of practice leading up to the Bears game, it wasn't crisp, it wasn't energized. It was almost like guys were going through the motions waiting for the postseason to get here. Maybe that's the reason they got caught off guard. But I look at it like, if they're going to come out, I remember when the Packers won the Super Bowl back in 2010. I remember sitting down with Ryan Pickett in his locker. Ryan Pickett and B.J. Rising, those guys are all around each other. And I said, how are you going to go on the road and win these games if you think you're going to get to a Super Bowl? And Ryan Pickett looked at me and he said, we got to eat it like candy. The more they boo, the worse it gets, the better we got to feel, because that means we're doing our job. So to me, they got to be able to just embrace the negativity coming out of Philadelphia, come out of the tunnel fired up, to establish themselves right away and then relax a little bit. Because I think going back to that, even that Vikings game when he said, yeah, we came out and we're playing tight. Well, that's on coaching, man. So I want to see them come out loose, come out fired up, and I want to see them come out and kind of impose themselves early on in this ball game.
Bill, before I let you go, your Buckeyes are in action tomorrow here too. How are you feeling about national championship thoughts for Ohio State?
You know what? I think just get through and get past Texas. Texas is going to be like a home game down at AT&T Stadium in the Cotton Bowl, but Texas is a really, really good team. What they've done, what Ohio State's done the last two games against Tennessee and Oregon have kind of shocked me, to be quite honest. But also, I think Ryan Day has stepped in with Brian Kelly, and they've changed up the offense a little bit. They've looked a little more downfield. They've taken more shots. They've been a little more, dominant up front in the offensive line. They've won in the trenches. So, as much as you'd like to think, I'll be honest with you, Dan, I'm not a big fan of Ryan Day. I think I've made it really well known.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's a great coach. I think he chokes in big moments, but these last two games have proven me wrong. Now we'll see what happens when he gets behind or if he gets behind against Texas. But, they're probably the most talented team and the deepest roster remaining in the Final Four. So to me, there's no reason they shouldn't win a national title, and if they don't, then you got to look at the reason why before you make a decision on Ryan Day. But they're a really talented team. Now, whether or not they can go put it together for two more games, we'll have to wait and see.
Bill, appreciate it so much for you joining us here this morning and dropping some wisdom with everybody here. Love it, and hopefully we can do it again soon with you, bud.
Anytime, man. Anytime. Just give me a buzz.
And that is going to do it for us on this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, again brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to the Man Cave Podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you could, give us a quick 5-star rating and a positive review. That way others can find the podcast. Until next time, I'm Dan Casper, and I'll talk to you in the next episode of the Man Cave Podcast.